Welcome to the Sales Leader of Influence show. For sales leaders who lead with soul, spirit, and spine. In a world obsessed with tactics, this is the show for those who know leadership is personal. And here's your host, Bernadette McClelland.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Sales Leader of Influence show. What a week it's been, and here in America for sure we are looking at a government shutdown, and I think what an amazing topic to tee off with today, and that is resources and resourcefulness, because when we have anything that is scarcity based, we really have to dig deep. And as a result of what we're looking at here, and off the back of tariffs as well, I mean, businesses are struggling already, families are struggling, and we really need to look at how we frame times when times are tough. And I mean, me for one, I have gone through bankruptcy, and I know exactly what it's like to lose resources and to really flip in and leverage resourcefulness. So I want to look today at how leaders can actually lead when budgets are tight. And that kind of brings in a number of different aspects. And we look at pipeline, we look at how we can leverage our people, and how do we keep them motivated, but how do we train them? And how do we build a high-performing environment and do more with less? So that's what I want to look at in today's episode. And I think that what I'd really like you to think about today is I'm not somebody who comes in with hacks or, you know, your top 3 tips and kind of let you loose, and I really want to give you something to think about and have you walk away today thinking about something a little bit deeper. And when you probably at some stage got the memo where it's like budgets are cut, headcounts frozen, you know, your numbers are going up, your CRM or tool integration or anything like that you're not getting any more of. And my question to you is, what was your first reaction? So at some stage or another, you would have got that memo. So what was your first reaction? Was it panic or was it complaint? Because it would be somewhere on that spectrum. And so if I was to ask, I guess, if we looked at an iceberg above the waterline, most salespeople would probably say, well, there goes my opportunities. Or, you know, most sales leaders would think, well, that's the budget, done and dusted. Because we tend to think at a real surface level, because it's human nature. It's natural just to think what's off the top of our head. But then if I was to ask you another question, and that question being, well, okay, what do those resources represent to you? Or what do those lack of resources represent to you? That's a different question. And when we kind of start to think at that level, we start to realize that there's a different relationship that we have to those resources. And it shifts our thinking and helps us reframe things. So I want to give you 3 ways that you can rethink that. So let me explain. So if I was to ask you, okay, so budgets have just been cut, headcount's been frozen, numbers are going up as well, by the way, more with less, we've got to do more with less. No, you can't have that CRM integration. So what do those resources represent? Because it's more than the opportunities lost and the budgets. Safety is number 1. So you think about it. You've not got you've not got the money, the funding that you thought that you were going to get. You're not going to have the tools. You're not going to have that headcount. And the other part of this is perks as well. So you think about the fact now that there are so many businesses that are saying work from home is no longer an option. You've now got to come into the office. So that was kind of a perk, even though it was great productivity. So this is now representing this whole, am I safe? Like they're cutting all of this, am I safe? So for some, this is now impacting the nervous system. And I spoke about that on last week's episode. And so this is like, am I going to keep my job? And so from a fear perspective as a leader, this could also represent, is there going to be some form of exposure? Am I going to be exposed now that I have lost these resources? So that's one point, is it's no longer more than just, okay, opportunities are going to be lost and commissions are going to be lost, and it's now my safety. The second part of this, for some, is going to be status. So some leaders are going to have huge budgets, or they're going to have tech that's, like really fancy, maybe tools. They're going to have larger headcount. Now maybe maybe there is cost cutting that's going to happen. Maybe they've got to lose staff. Maybe they no longer have that VIP car park. Maybe the perks, we've got two lots of perks here. One is the work from home, the safety-based one. The other is the status-based perk. Maybe now the President's Club is being taken away from them. So now we're looking at a totally different representation of what these resources represent. So now we're looking at, it's an ego marker. So maybe the loss of resources now represents some form of power or some form of credibility. So identity comes into it now. So if we're thinking now, okay, my identity is like, how do I save face? Maybe this is the fear of this. So we've now got two. We've got the safety component, and now we've got the status component. Now, what about those leaders who perhaps take shortcuts as a result of, let's think about it, those leaders who maybe don't do prospecting. So they buy a list. And so now there's no funding for a list. And so now they're like, oh, I don't do prospecting. And I don't do prospecting. My team don't do prospecting. We buy lists. Like, we take shortcuts. Or it's the sales leader that always brings in a sales consultant or a sales trainer or, somebody external, and now there's no funding, and now they've got to do it themselves. Well, I don't know where to start. I don't do sales training. I've got no idea how to train my team. Or it's a leader perhaps that has always given incentives or spiffs, or now they've got to create this morale and they have no idea. And therefore, they're kind of like the emperor with no clothes. They're now feeling naked, and it's like they have to now start to tap into creativity or maybe resilience. And so all of a sudden, they're feeling like they are not enough. And so these are three angles, I guess, where leaders, so we're looking safety and status and those that take shortcuts. So these are three angles where a lack of resources can impact a leader over and above just the normal, well, geez, this is an inconvenience. This is absolutely annoying me. This is, I'm panicking. And this is the deeper reasons why. So we're talking here at a human needs level. So if you think of, the human needs that need to be met, we all have these needs for certainty and variety and significance, whether it's, resourceful or unresourceful, but we all have these human needs. And so when resources are taken away from us, whether it's through budget cuts or headcount freezes or just the numbers being, increased or whatever it is, this is how it's impacting us. And so what we do when we're under pressure, we will always revert to what is familiar to us. And so when what's familiar to us is taken away from us, then what happens is our imagination disappears and panic fills the area of our brain where our problem-solving skills are needed. And so when that happens, we need to be able to tap back into, well, how do we find those internal resources that we can tap into? And those internal resources are creativity and resilience and all this resourcefulness that we need to tap into when times are tough. And we saw it in COVID. And so what I want to kind of help do today is to swap that panic for some form of innovative or imaginative thinking. And am I going to have all the answers for you? Absolutely not. I want to help you think a little bit differently outside the square. So I guess one of my biggest lessons, and so I mentioned bankruptcy, like my husband and I went through bankruptcy a number of years ago, and when every single resource, I'm talking money, I'm talking home, I'm talking car, I'm talking to the point where you literally use food stamps, where you literally go to the op shop, when everything is taken away from you and you have nothing, you find a way. And the way that you find your way is through your resourcefulness. And I know it's such a cliche that you hear motivational speakers say, everything you have is within you. It is so true. And so I walked the Camino. It was the shortest distance that you're allowed to walk to qualify as walking the Camino. And it was back in 2019. And so it was 6 days, 130 kilometers in 5.5 days, I think it was. And out of those 5.5 days, 3 of those days or 3.5 days was torrential rain. And my kids had said, Mum will catch a taxi or a bus. And luckily I had my Fitbit to prove that I did walk 20 Ks every day. And I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I walked solo and I just knew I had no choice. I just had to walk because there was no other way for me to get from A to B. And I'm walking 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, the first morning, and I'm walking through a forest, and I could feel, and I knew that I was told that if you get water down the back of your socks, that's it. That's the fastest way that you'll get blisters. And so I could feel the water going down the back of my socks, and it wasn't long before it was slosh, slosh, slosh. And I'm walking through a forest, and all I could think of was there are no shoe shops out here. And my thinking went to my father, and it was like, what would Dad do? Because he was one of 13 kids and they didn't have a lot of money. And so I remember Dad saying, when they were kids, in the winter, they used to put newspaper in the bottom of their shoes. And so I'm walking through the forest and coming out of the forest, and there were, spatterings of little houses, and on their big gates there were these long blue plastic bags. And what are these long blue plastic bags? And then it clicked with me that in Spain, they have long loaves of bread. And so they were the bread bags. So I get to this clearing where there's like this little diamond-shaped village, and it was about 9 o'clock, and there was this little cafe and these little Spanish men with their little espressos, and I've walked in, and in broken English, I managed to get some newspaper and some long blue plastic bags. And I only had 2 pairs of socks, and I changed my socks into dry socks, and I put my foot into my clean sock and my clean sock into a blue plastic bag, and I tied the blue plastic bag around my ankle, and then I put it into my shoe that had newspaper in it. And for the remainder of those 3 days, I walked with those blue plastic bags, and I was known as the blue plastic bag pilgrim. And so where I'm going with this is that I had no resources. I had no shoes except those wet ones. And so that was my creativity in action in another country, in another part of the world. And so when we can think outside the square, lots of new opportunities come. So when it comes to your pipeline, there are so many different ways that we can think outside the square. And if you can move away from the spam, the fake personalization, and I'm big on direct mail and always have been. And so I'll just go old school. But the other part of it is if you look at what is already in front of you and think, okay, low cost, highest ROI, be really, really surgical, and look at your lost deals, the ones that never replied, those ones that are in your CRM, in your pipeline. Even if you, and I want you to write this down. So if you're driving, don't. But there is a question that I do want you to write down, and that is to go back to either one of a client that you haven't spoken to for a long time. Maybe it is a lapsed client or one of your current clients, and book in a 30-minute call and only ask this question. So just one question. And that question is, what is the greatest pain or what is the future challenge? Okay, so the greatest pain or the future challenge that we are not currently helping you with. So what is the greatest pain or the future challenge that we are currently not helping you solve? And so that is a great question to kickstart. So see how you go with that. But that's just kind of a question that you do. But outside of that, what I do is what few people do. But I'm hearing that it's starting to take off because it's so different. The other thing is when it comes to your team and when it comes to training them. So let's just say that you haven't got the funds to bring somebody in. Yeah, sure, you're probably getting people to, share stuff in meetings and everybody's doing that. But here's an idea that I thought about, and it's based on 2 companies that I work with, and they're both doing things that could cross over, that they're both doing things. Let me explain it. That would be better. So I coach Nokia, and Nokia do a global program on storytelling. Now, part of Nokia's plan, part of their process is that they have what's called a story bank. And so they choose some of their salespeople that go through the program who have awesome stories, and they create a story bank, which means that their salespeople from all over the world could actually access that story bank and use those stories in their sales conversations. So park that part of it. I also coach Harvard, the MBA students. And when I coach them, I've got access to their gong recordings that I can listen to and, coach around that, as well as coach them one-on-one. Now, let's just say that you have gong or you have the equivalent of those recordings. We've now got two kind of examples here. Let's just say that you've got those recordings of your salespeople. What if you were to take clips of your own sales team, of where your salespeople were really great in those clips, and you were to create your own clip library similar to Nokia's story library. So your sales team could actually listen to each other's clips. Not the whole thing, but just clips where that salesperson was great at maybe starting the conversation or middle of the way through, or maybe quantifying or qualifying or asking for the business at the end. So these are just different ways of thinking outside the square. So I'm just kind of thinking up some examples for you. So then when it comes to another example of creating that high-performing team, if you are a leader and you are focusing entirely on the numbers and thinking that your salespeople are motivated entirely by high-fiving numbers, then I want you to realize that there is a much more powerful way of creating a high-performing, energetic culture. And that is realizing that meaning and purpose of why your team are there in the first place far surpasses the numbers, the focus on the numbers. We are all driven by a need for connection and growth and contribution. And so if you can let your salespeople know that the input is more important than the output, and that will go so much further. So that's what I want to kind of share with you when it comes to resourcefulness, because they are putting in, and that resourcefulness counts for so much. So the other part of all of this, and this is, I'm going to give you a resource now, and this resource is a book. And so you could share this with the team. Hey, here's a great idea, book club. So this made a huge difference for me. And the book is called Who Not How by Dr. Ben Hardy. And so the premise behind this is that so many of us get stuck in how. So budgets are being cut, headcount's down. How on earth am I going to make ends meet? How on earth am I going to make my numbers? How on earth, how on earth, how on earth? And we're focused so much on the how. And that is so linear. We get so stuck in the how. And when we get stuck in the how, we go nowhere. And so this is all about, who do we know that we can leverage who already knows the how? And so resourcefulness is hardly ever about starting from scratch. Okay? When you're resourceful, it's about leveraging what is already there. And so, when we came out of bankruptcy, we got very clear about what it was we wanted to do, and leveraging who, every door we opened, it was an opportunity to leverage what was there. And that's, for me personally, is how I went from here to here to here. But it's got to be the right people as well, or you could go down rabbit holes. So I guess what I wanted to share with you today, because we're going through such turbulent times, is that safety. We look at safety, we look at status, we look at shortcuts, and we look at the fact that we all have a need for certainty. None of that is about money or budgets. None of it's about that. It's about you coming to a place of neutrality. It's about, if you've listened to me, you'll hear me talk a lot about the gap, the gift of the gap. It is that space between one polarity and another. So if you are coming from a place of abundance, which is what you had with all your resources, and you are moving now to a place of scarcity where you have no resources, or what you have had have been cut, you are in this, you can either go straight to scarcity and panic, or you can be in this place of the gift of the gap or neutrality, and you want to be in that neutral place because that gives you options. And when you're in that place of neutrality, that is where you learn to have faith that there is an opportunity somewhere for you. And when you're in that place, that's where you'll find the opening. That is where you will find your answer. But you need to come from the place of believing that. And of course, if all you're doing is needing and wanting and getting, you will never find it. So I wanted to leave you with that. If you want to find out a little bit more about the Sales Leader of Influence program, or you perhaps yourself want to find out a little bit more about yourself, or where you can get more clarity, or where your clarity as a leader is strong, where it might be slipping, or where there might be a lack of clarity completely in your role as a sales leader, I'm going to get Jason to put up on the screen a scorecard where you can go and just have fun, a little bit of fun there, revenueenrollclarity.com/scorecard. And it's a revenue reliability, 20 questions, and it'll lead you and give you an update on where you are across 5 categories. And it's based on all my work over the past 10, 12 years with sales leaders just like you. So on that note, in this interesting week that we are in, especially here in America, I want you to continue to lead with soul, with spirit, and with spine. So on that note, we will see you here this time next week. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching the Sales Leader of Influence show with your host, Bernadette McClelland. See you next Wednesday live at 5 o'clock Eastern.